go into.
All right, how about now? Whoa.
Yeah. I think your phone.
About that, Joe. All right, how's that now?
Working out the bugs, y'all. Just be patient.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'm gonna turn off this mic. Hopefully that'll help make it.
Testing.
Much better.
Yeah. All right. So we're looking pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and get going here. Just a little concerned that I can hear myself through the laptop.
Well, all you have to do is you don't have to worry about the speakers on there. Turn the sound off on these speakers. You know what I'm saying? Those speakers. There you go. And the rest can be as loud as you want. Then you got to worry about the feedback.
There we go. Now I can probably have my mic back.
Yes, you can.
All right, so we're going to get into the show today. This is the No Cap Recap. This week we are talking about James chapter 5, verses 1 through 5.
1 through 6.
1 through 6, okay. And you have them up right now, correct?
Well, yeah, on my tablet.
Yeah, you mind reading those while I type those in the chat for everyone?
Hold on one sec. Keyshawn, can you turn us down just a tad? Not too
1
much.
and 2?
Yeah, just a little bit. Okay, that's good. Perfect. All right, so James chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, reading from the Christian Standard Bible, says, "Come now, you rich people, weep and wail over the miseries that are coming on you." That's a point I really wanted to. Anyway, verse 2: "Your wealth has rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have stored up treasure in the last days. Look, they pay that. Look, they pay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Forgive me, everybody. Verse 4, "Look, the pay that you withheld from the workers who mowed your fields cries out, and the outcry of the harvesters has reached the ears of the Lord of armies. You have lived luxuriously on the earth and have indulged yourselves. You have fattened your hearts in the day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the righteous who does not resist you." I'm sorry about I butchered that because there's some typos on my iPad here. I'm gonna type it in. I apologize about that.
So I'm gonna type it in the chat so you can read along.
Well,
But go ahead and recap. What was the purpose of you picking these particular verses, and what was your message there?
So the reason why I picked these particular verses was we've been doing the book of James, and so it's just a natural progression. This week was the beginning of chapter 5, and so just happened to be where we were at. So we began this series back in March, believe it or not. Man, seems like forever ago. And I prayed about it, and God led me to preach the entire book of James, and so it's just kind of been a series and like I said, just out of natural progression, we landed here on chapter 5. And so today we looked at the first 6 verses, which is really a warning, not so much, against the rich, but against the hoarding of riches, and just being stingy pretty much, it's just like, hey, share, play nice, which we know we don't see much of these days. So yeah.
I thought this was interesting that well, like you said, this is the order of operations that it came in. I felt like this message really wasn't toward at least myself, right? So, it seemed like you were speaking against the rich.
Well, again, not so much against the rich, and when you really look at it, it's about hoarding resources, just kind of being like being a miser, being stingy, and in fact that was the theme, the miserable miser, and I hit a lot more. I was like, all right, time's getting there, and so I kind of cut it short. But there's a lot. There's a lot in these short 6 verses to kind of touch on. And the Bible doesn't condemn people for being rich, which I was kind of talking about in the message. It doesn't condemn people for being rich. The condemnation comes from placing money in the position of God, idolizing it, and just having that rat race mentality where it's just all about money, 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 materialisticness, and hoarding it, and not and not sharing, you know, uh, uh, resources.
Well, and that's why the message didn't resonate with me, right? Because I don't hoard my resources, I don't hoard my money, I don't hoard my time.
Well, it should have still resonated with you because.
You can't tell me what resonates with me, what doesn't.
I cannot. Let me say what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
What I'm trying to say. Okay, not resonate in the sense of like speaking to you personally, but not resonate. It should be identified. You should be able to identify with it. Is maybe what I'm trying to say, because we live in a world where we see so much hoarding of resources, and that's maybe what I was trying to say.
Right, and while we do, right, and I'm blessed and highly favored, right.
Amen.
I get. I was telling Sabrina the other day. Actually, this was I think Thursday night. We had done our. No, it wasn't Thursday night. It was Wednesday night. We had done our pancake breakfast. It was in the evening. I had done my show, my evening show, covering the Birmingham City Council, and then after that, about 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting ready for bed, and I just had this overwhelming sense of really feeling blessed.
Amen.
Right? Like, Amen. I'm laying on this really comfortable bed. I could hop in the shower if I wanted to. I had just gotten back from Wendy's, right? So I could drive to another city and get Wendy's.
Yeah.
But that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Right? I could order anything that I wanted off of the menu. Right? I could walk, I could speak, I can think. I was really thankful for just the really simple things.
Yeah.
And this peace had come over me in that moment.
Amen.
And so I prayed and was very thankful in that space. I actually haven't felt like that in a while. Right? I'm blessed. I feel blessed. I say it. I don't say it as just a thing to say. I do feel blessed, but I was really feeling blessed in that moment right before I went to bed.
Amen.
Right? All that to say, we know that right now, most of us are struggling in the worst ways. We know that we have a homelessness epidemic here in this country. We know we have food shortages. We have folks that are dying of starvation, not only here, but also globally. when we're in a bad situation, right? Healthcare, it goes on and on and on. Mental health, drug addiction. And so for me, this didn't resonate because it's like we all know what the rich do. We know what our politicians do. You brought up Elon Musk. We know what they do. So, those things, for me, this message didn't really click in. And I feel like the practical side is I need something that I can use from whatever we're digging into. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, what is someone who is homeless, not knowing how they're going to put gas in their car to get to work the next day? How are they going to, I don't know if I can do that. How are they going to figure out their next meal? Are they going to have to choose between their medication or food? What are those things? And so what is the message there? We know what the greedy rich are doing. We know what the folks that walk past you every day and they do their thing, right? They tell you to pull yourself up from your bootstraps. Or you know what? Some of those folks are struggling too, right? That's why we see storage sheds being erected all over the place because you have folks that were in these nice homes that are now having to downsize because they can't afford.
Right.
So for me, I'm always looking at how can I apply whatever this teachable moment is in this particular word in these particular verses that I can apply either to myself or to the folks that come across me. And so I just didn't get that from that message, but that message was about the rich, right? Even the passage is talking about that. So, I'm going to give it back to you to say a few things. And then as you do, I'm going to try to twist it and figure out how that can be applicable, right?
So with this particular, and I'll say this, just kind of as a general statement as well. With this particular message, a lot of people may, come away kind of feeling as you did, that it doesn't really resonate. I don't fit in that category and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, this can be applicable to everybody,
Talk about it.
And so,
in what way?
You don't quit interrupting me. We playing prison rules today. All right. This can be applicable to everybody. And so the thing is, let's just look at it in this way. When we look at the analogies, the examples that I gave, as far as the Zuckerbergs, the Gates, the Musk, and the T.D. Jakes and Copelands and so forth, the Osteins, we look at those people and we would say, okay, these are very wealthy people. They have a lot of resources, and they most definitely have room to spare, right? They can kind of they can afford to give a bit more. However, it's applicable in the sense that we all, just as in what you were saying, you were feeling blessed the other day. You could get up and go to another city and get Wendy's, get anything off the menu. You could walk and speak, and you can get up and go turn on, your sink and let fresh, clean water, drinkable water, just run if you wanted to, and you could do these things, right? Blessed and highly favored. The thing is, there's people that don't even have those resources. So, in their eyes, you are the Musk, you are the Bill Gates. You know what I'm saying? You do have, you're at that status and that level where it's like, man, you got a car. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You got, and I don't mean to tell you business, but you got two, right? You got a truck in the backyard. You know what I'm saying? And so,
snitches get stitches, right?
I know we playing prison rules. It's a tough day to be playing prison rules. But anyway, so there's always, that next level, so to speak, right? And so there's resources, that myself, I got a couple of cars and a scooter and same things like like what you're saying, right? You know, and so we all can afford to maybe give a little bit more than what we do. You know what I'm saying? And we all can be,
Look, they exclude me out of that because I feel like I'm doing more than my share.
And I do too. But however, my point is, you went and bought you some Wendy's.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. That could have been given to somebody.
No.
Hold on. I'm being very extra here. Okay, I'm going to the extremes in what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, there's people that are in our say tax bracket, that still hoard, and it ain't nothing that they ain't got hardly two pennies to rub together, but they still hoard it. There's people, that have come in, and we've all, well, not everybody, but there's the joke of the Baptist dollar. You know what I'm saying? You ever heard the joke about the Baptist dollar?
I love the joke. Tell me the joke.
Okay, so the Baptist dollar is, when the plate comes around, the Baptists, they put in the dollar, and that dollar go from one church to the next church because that's all everybody ever give is just a dollar. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is like, yeah, could you afford to put maybe a 5 in there at least? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But
I might put more in there if they were, pulpit pimps that were, driving and flying and having their own planes.
And I get you on that, and trust me. But the point, what I'm making is,
I know you lose me,
So the point is, there's people even in our tax brackets that we ain't got much of nothing, and we definitely struggling to pay the bills and do everything else, but we still find the odd 5, 10 for a cappuccino from Starbucks or a Dave's double or whatever else. But when it comes to giving to, places of need, it's like, oh, I can't afford to, give of my money, time, or resources. Okay, yeah, I can't, I'm in a bad tax bracket, so I can't afford to, say maybe put, 100 in the tithing plate every week, but I could come and give of my time, because I'm hoarding my resources. I'd rather sit and watch, Saturday Night Live and, the big game and everything else where I could give up my time and, maybe go and mentor some youth, help children learn how to read, stuff, anything, right? You have a need for volunteers, and there's people that's hoarding their resources, just the same way like Elon Musk, and his billions and Zuckerberg and his billions, they have an excess and they may not have time because they're so busy, running corporations where, their excess that they're hoarding is money. And that's, visible. People can be like, oh man, they can put a finger on that because, it's quantifiable, but time is too, and that's needed just as much as, the finances. And so where are the people that's coming in and saying, yeah, you know what, maybe I can't, really help the church out so much or G2 out so much with, a donation, but I can with, my time, my talents, because that is a very needed, valuable resource as well.
So let me jump in there.
Go ahead.
When I listen to a message from anyone who's providing a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
I try to take it, first off, as I always say, you got to be intellectually honest, right?
Yeah.
Try to read past what they're saying and how it's coming across to what their intention is, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're not intellectually honest, it's very easy to say, well, you said this, see, I got you, right? But that's not really what you were trying to say. You understood that, but you just want to be right, okay? So there's that. And then that's not what I was doing. I was just taking this passage really is talking about the rich, right? And their time and their hoarding of their resources. For me, as far as a practical application of these 6 verses in today, I believe that those of us that are living in poverty and low income, Elon Musk is on a whole other plane, right? It almost does us no good to even have that conversation. I think when you're bringing it down to maybe folks that work in the shipyard or principals, that might be more realistic when you see what folks use with their time. When you're telling those who are already struggling the most that, and you were using an extreme example, like, well, you got this Wendy's, so maybe you should have gave that Wendy's to someone who was even less fortunate than you. I don't agree with that, and let me tell you what I do agree with. And the reason why I don't agree with that is, again, the practical piece is we need self-care, right? And self-care comes in a lot of forms. So that person that, man, I'm gonna have this Wendy's. This might be the first time I've had Wendy's in a month, right? This might be my first fast food, and now I've misconstrued what you're saying is, well, you know what? You could have gave that away because you could have had some top ramen and gave someone who didn't even have any food. And I don't think that's what's required.
No.
Right?
No.
There's a self-care piece of it that, hey, you watch Saturday Night Live, you're working 40, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. Yeah, I'm gonna sit down here and I'm gonna get a respite, for a second because I got to go work a second shift somewhere else. So I think that's important to state, and that gets missed when we only have 15 minutes or 20 minutes to preach a sermon, right? So it's really hard to really dig into that and not have your heart hardened by a short message. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that, my thoughts and the way I kind of am digesting this is saying, okay, when I think of the principal or the local folks that are doing well that don't seem to spend any of their resources to help, either time, money, whatever, right? What can I do that isn't going to hurt, right? What can I do that is going to enrich me? Because the one thing that we know that when it is better to give than to receive, you get fed from doing that, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
I think from a religious standpoint or a non-religious standpoint, you get fed by being able to help other people. And while you're going through things and you're waiting for the paint to dry, because it takes 3 weeks for you to wait for that birth certificate or whatever that resource is to clean up your credit, to get your license back, whatever those things are. If you are engaged in trying to help others, one, it makes time go a little bit faster, but it also empowers you, right? It lifts you from a place of helplessness into a place of empowerment. So I think that's really important. And so you have to not take on more than you can bear, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't give till it hurts you. You can't keep your lights on, but you're gonna give up. You need to work that second job. You're dead on your feet, but you're gonna come in here and try to watch some kids or run a Bible study or drive for G2. You could do those things, but it could be to your detriment.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be taking stock of your life and seeing how you might be able to fit those things in where it's mutually beneficial. So we talk about at G2 the intangibles, right? If you drive for G2, maybe you get a stipend. If you're volunteering for G2, well, now you have a vehicle when you didn't have one, so you can run around errands, right? You're now surrounded by other folks that are all swimming in the same direction while they're going through their things, but now you've got this networking, right? You're gaining these knowledge, skills, and abilities that you wouldn't normally have access to, but you're looking at it just as, I'm just driving this vehicle, right? But there's so many more things that you can get from it. And having that mindset, in a way, it's counterintuitive. It's like, hey, I'm giving of myself some extra time, but I'm actually getting so much more back in it. So while it seems selfish, you're actually being blessed. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I follow your what you're putting down, bro, with no problem, and I agree with you. Especially to the point of trying to impress so much in such a little time. Because if you recall, like I said, there's a lot to these 6 verses. You know what I'm saying, and so sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult to compress so much, into such a short time and kind of get across that. And, so using very extreme examples, in my thought process, seem the better approach, right? But also that's why we're doing this here.
That's why I love this format.
To be able to dig deeper into kind of what's going on.
Mhm.
And so not everybody, you know it's not a one size fit all where, like, you're all condemned because you could do X, Y, and Z, and if you're not doing X, Y, and Z, then bad person. Like, no, that's not the intent behind this. The intent is that we take my intent behind this was that people take, what I'm saying, do an analysis of you know their their resources, whatever it may be, money, time, talent, whatever it is. Take a analysis of that and say, hey, is there areas of excess that I'm keeping, you know uh, that I could give or I should be given. We have to remember, Jesus said he's going to separate the sheep from the goat. And he's going to tell, the goat, like, hey, when I was sick, you didn't come visit me. When I was in prison, you didn't come visit me. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was, cold, you didn't clothe me, right? Things that we should be doing for one another. Are there, saying things, and if you look at those things that he says, he's talking about time, talent, and resources. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you can't afford to feed me, but you can come and spend and sit a little bit, spend a little bit of time, with me, right? So the thing is, and that's what I was saying. We may not all be in that category of the Muskets and the Gates or whatever else, but if we all sit and say, what do I have that I'm keeping back, what I'm saying, and that I'm really holding on to. And yeah, maybe, what I'm saying, you look at yourself and you kind of take an analysis of, your time, talent, and resources, and you say, what, I'm giving, I'm doing. Then, amen. Then, if the shoe don't fit, it don't apply to you.
Well, I think you need to say that in the message. I think that gets missed, right?
Yeah. Well,
because the message ends and it's like, well, if you need to take stock of your life, and if you ain't giving and you lacking, then that's a problem. It's like, hey, right now I'm homeless. So right now I can't make ends meet. I don't have nothing to give.
What is it that you always tell me?
What's that?
Well, I ain't gonna say you tell me, but I hear you say it.
What's that?
Hit dogs holler.
Hit dogs holler. Well, but again, you have to understand, right? I'm versed in the Bible. Mm-hmm. I've been around for a long time.
Oh yeah.
I'm an educated person,
right?
Yeah. I understand how to have a conversation with someone and analyze it. But another reason why we do this is because there's an audience that's gathering this, right? That are either not here in the church body, right? Have turned away from the church body because they felt like they weren't fed from it. So if that piece isn't missed, right? And it's like, well, yeah, I am a hit dog and I'm hollering, but I don't understand, and now I'm just feeling attacked. So there's no point in me listening to this message, right? It's just more of the same. That's what I mean. It should be stated. Like, if you're doing a good job, we need the attaboys too. It's like, hey man, I gave this mother a ride to work. I'm helping the carpool. I dropped off an extra meal. I counseled someone on the phone because they were stressed out. That's it. That's when that person was down. So when Jesus asked that question, when I was down, were you there for me? I can say yes. And I had nothing. You know what I'm saying? But I was able to give that other person that was on the street a cigarette that really needed it. And you know how finite those resources are, right? But I gave that away. And so in that space, that person can say that. So I think that's where it's important to say that so there's context. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, folks can go away like, what's going on?
I feel you. I have no rebuttal. I when you right, you're right. So yeah.
All right. So I wanted to jump into one other thing that you had talked about in the sermon. I had actually heard this before, and made it sound like there were different levels in heaven, right? So it was like in heaven, you were telling the story about people having different size crowns, and like, where's your crown? And and you're in heaven, but where's all your good deeds and whatnot? Can you explain that a little bit? Because I was, like I said, that's the first time I heard it.
So I don't believe that there's different levels of heaven. That's something I think Mormons preach or whatever. But when we read our Bible, we see that there are certain crowns that in the Bible that said you get for certain things, right? Actually in James. There's one, I think, in chapter 4 for those who endure. You get a crown or whatever. And the thing is, so what I was kind of saying is, what I try and preach, and I tell people, and I say this a lot, is building up spiritual currency is what I talk about pretty much. And so in the Bible, Jesus says, in Matthew chapter 6, he talks about, storing up your treasures in heaven, where they don't, where, moths can't eat them and, rust and all that stuff or whatever. They don't, kind of degrade. And so the thing that I'm trying to, get across is, building up, the type of attributes and characteristics that Christ exuded, right? To be more Christ-like, and you probably heard me say this when during the message, like where's your fruit of the spirit, building up those things, that are pleasing in God's eyesight, having a bit of patience with people and a bit of humility and having joy and peace and long suffering and building up and I call those things spiritual currency. When we kind of start to learn to be more of the way that God wants us to be, and that's the whole thing is about our preparation for heaven is, learning, how to behave pretty much,
So let me ask you, so is what you're saying, because again, this is new, so this is new concept for me, right? Is what you're saying is you want to build up your spiritual currency so that when you are judged, right, and you're looking at the scales of judgment, you've done more good than bad, like, okay.
No, because, that isn't where salvation lies, we're our salvation is just simply in our faith and belief in Jesus Christ. Is what the Bible teaches us, right? So it's not about good or bad. Again, it's about learning how to behave. So God doesn't allow sin, around him, in having this, no, right? And so when we learn how to rid ourselves of bad behaviors, which are sinful, and to adopt good behaviors, that's spiritual currency. That's, building up your spirit, man. I'm just saying it.
But how does that help you when you're already in heaven?
What do you mean help you? I don't
because
think
in the sermon you were saying you said you were giving an example like, oh, look how my crown looks this big, and well, what about this? Where's your crown at? How come you didn't do all these things?
Okay, so the big crown thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is like Pastor Mackey used to talk about having a big head and a big crown. So that was kind of a joke for some of the older members that were that was more of an inside joke type deal, right? But then again, the where's your crown? That's a reference to again, us receiving, crowns for certain things, right? So it's like, okay, hey, where's your crown at? Like, you do X, Y, Z. Like,
all right. So here's my thought on that, right?
But hold on, let me finish.
Go ahead.
But I know also that I'm being facetious in that. It's not. I'm not. Nobody's gonna be having like looking and judging one another on what they do and don't have, because again, that's a characteristic that God's trying to breed us out of. Where we're kind of sizing one another up.
Right, but if I'm new in Christ or I don't know the Bible at all, then I'm like, what? Because I'm like, I know a little bit, and I'm like, what? Because my thing is like, look, life is hard. If I make it to heaven, I don't care if I'm just inside the door or all the way in, I'm in heaven. You know what I'm saying? So I don't give a damn about my crown. I'm there.
A door. What is it? I'd rather be a doorman in heaven than something in hell. But
yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So let me tell you the worldly way that I'm looking at that. When you say build up your spiritual currency, I look at it as habits, right? There's bad habits and there's good habits. So if you're consistently trying to do the right thing, I talk about how one of my mentors told me to put a piece of paper down at my feet and look down at it. And that piece of paper says, is what I'm doing now serving my mission? And if it's not, that's a cue for me to get back on mission, right? And so as I start building those habits and I start, showing that I can do these things and make the right choice and make the right decision over and over again, it's going to do a few things for me. One, it's going to make the things, because sometimes it's hard to do a good habit, right? I'm going to exercise, I'm going to diet, I'm going to eat right. It's hard. But once you start doing it and that routine is set, then it becomes a lifestyle change, right? It becomes easier. So that's one benefit. The secondary benefit of that is as you go through trials and tribulations in your life, because you have built up these good habits, you're able to navigate those a little bit easier. So I think about my father, right? One of the strongest men that I knew. He lost his son. Told you my brother died when he was 24 of sickle cell, and I had just driven cross country from Bremerton to DC because he was moving, and we had to fly back. And when we landed, the hearse was in my dad's driveway with my brother's body in the back to identify. I mean, that's how fast we had to come back, because he died at Harrison, and that was a scenario. So he leaves. His son dies. Now he's got to bury his son. Eulogize his son, and start as a principal in DC and keep all those things going, right? When he was going through the amputations through his diabetes, and I would watch him just scream and holler because he didn't want to take pain meds, right? And amputation after amputation, but still having that joy and that peace of spirit. We're going to go through those things in life. No one is exempt from that. But how you go through it is up to you, right? Yeah. And so that's how I think of the spiritual currency, right? So the more that I do the right thing, the more that I make the right choices, the more that I help others, the more that I build good habits. When I go through these hard things, folks are saying to me, it's like, hey, you just had back surgery 2 Fridays ago. How are you walking in a march? How are you doing this? Why are you even doing these things? And it's like, well, I have a spirit and a peace and a joy and a purpose that allows me to power through that. Now, I might be on my knees, when the cameras are on and people can't see me, but that's what propels me forward. That's what keeps me going every day. Otherwise, I may not be able to do these things at all, right? So that's how I interpret that part of your message.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like you're right. It and that's one of my encouragements is that the message challenges us to be more, to make changes, to be more like Christ, and again, I guess maybe I need to tone down my metaphors and analogies. They do tend to be a bit extreme, but
no, I think they can be helpful.
They can't, they can, but I think maybe more context may be needed. The thing is, I'm trying to get people to kind of I guess like a shock and awe, because a lot of people are really entrenched and kind of really dug into the worldly aspects of things, and so when you get to talking about spiritual things, it can be pretty foreign, and trying to get them to relate to those things and understand that these things. Are important and they have value, and that they matter. I try and put them in a context that like I say, it's a bit, extreme and shocking, and like I say, yeah, building up some spiritual currency, and it's all just about, like you said, just learning how to, pretty much behave the way that God wants us to behave, behave properly. One of the biggest, problems with mankind has always been that we wanted to, choose and decide for ourselves what was good, and that was the whole thing with Adam and Eve, eating from the knowledge, of good and evil, not, and so once we gained that knowledge, we was like, oh, okay, well, we want to decide what's good and evil, but we don't have that wisdom to do so, and so we still need God to lead and direct us, and yeah, just trying to get people to just kind of really disconnect so much from you know this temporary world, and start thinking more long term. Like, yeah, what's that what's it going to be like on the other side, for you.
But I get you. That's the business you're in for sure. And that's important. But when you're in crisis and when you don't have and you're lacking, it's hard to see past death, let alone 10 years from now, 5 years from now, next month, next week, right? I need answers and solutions now that are gonna enable me to be able to manage my life in bigger chunks, so I can look a little bit further, right? That's the thing. So many people are living their lives like this out of necessity, right? Either by second, by minute, by hour, by day. And as they gain skills and their situation changes, they can start to raise their head a little bit and now look at weeks, months, and years. And then once they're really in it, now they can look out and project past that, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do a show on generational wealth because folks need to stop the cap on telling folks about generational wealth. Because I think that's selling them a bill of goods, because that's a behavioral change. They would need to sacrifice their entire life for them to pass on generational wealth. Because if you're spending the money now, you ain't generating no wealth for nobody. You ain't even got it for yourself. But I digress from that. But again,
to touch a little bit on living like this, and I agree with you. People are kind of hand to mouth, and just really in that moment, that moment of need, and sometimes it can be a cursing and a blessing at the same time. The thing is, we we don't know that tomorrow, and I preached about this a couple of weeks ago. We don't know that tomorrow even exists, sometimes, and you know, um, that's again something that I'm trying to even for those people that are, like you say, living like this. It's like hey, if tomorrow doesn't exist for you, even though your worldly situation right now may not be the best, and may be very dire. um, we still have to um, give space, for the eternal,
wait a minute.
and
I think you're just saying it hard. It's like contradictory. Like you're like, I know you're living like this, and tomorrow ain't promised to you, so you need to look past tomorrow and look past that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
not look past tomorrow. Well, just well, I'll put it this way, to have, and I find this, in my interactions, with, the homeless that I had, what's the PC term?
People that are unhoused, folks that are experiencing homelessness. You don't you don't categorize the person by what it is they're experiencing.
Yeah. So my experience with the unhoused is that a lot of them are very spiritually aware, and have a great reliance on God, and I find a lot of them to, speak on God more than, the people that are housed. And when we were on the other side of town, we frequently had, you know, uh, unhoused come in and join the services, and you know, so I do think it's possible that you may be, experiencing, you know, hardships, but that doesn't prevent a person from, having a appreciation for the eternal. And so maybe the materialistic things, the people that are housed, maybe they have a handicap by being housed because, they just, they lay down, waking up, wanting tomorrow and, expecting tomorrow, and so they're like, and they may, not, have that appreciation for, the eternal, and so maybe that could be a handicap, um, that they're experiencing,
So I'll share like this. When I was teaching at the college, as an advisor and as an instructor, I can't tell my students to, plan for their salvation. You know what I'm saying? That's not the place for that. But, not only did I teach classes and advise, I would tell folks and teach and advise that however you're living your life. Some people, they come in and they're already thinking at the finish line, right? I'm going to be this business person and I'm going to make six figures and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, you ain't even taken the acupuncture yet. You don't even know where you're at in English and your math. You need to take your head down here, right? So people are at different stages in their lives. And so my lesson there is it's good that you're looking whatever direction you're looking, but you have to give attention to all of those different stages, right? And so if you are living minute to minute, second to second, you have to look at what's beyond that, right? So do you need to get your driver's license back? Do you need a birth certificate? Do you need your social security card? Do you need to go to the doctor, right? Those are things that are going to help you in the long run, or in the mid short term, right? But it's going to take time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a few weeks for that to kick in, And by you getting all those things in place, it might be a year or two before you get housing, right? Where you can get your first last deposit or your Section 8 voucher comes in, or you get through that vocational program from the college, right? That's years off. You need to look at that too. And how is your life going to work while you're working toward that, right? And then beyond that, well, tomorrow's not promised to anyone. So you need to keep a check on your salvation at the same time while you're going through, right? So all of these things all have to happen simultaneously. And I know that it seems like a lot. However, what we were talking to earlier is by giving back, by serving others, even if you don't have it in regards of money, you get all these intrinsic benefits, right? You get all of these extrinsic benefits. You get all these intangible benefits, right? Intangible benefits in the way of you have the networking, you have the support, we're gather together, grow together, right? We're going to come together, we're going to grow in the way that we're going to grow. There's going to be growing pains. Not always going to be fun. We're going to argue, but you're not going to be alone, right? You're going to be exposed to others that have knowledge, skills, and abilities that you don't have. You're going to learn something. And while you're waiting for the things that you're doing in your life to improve your life, You're not watching that pot boil. You're not waiting for that paint to dry. You're occupying your mind, so you're not just sitting in a victim mentality or woe's me or when is this going to happen, right? You get busy doing the work of helping others while you're helping yourself, and you look up and it's like, I got one more quarter left. I've got one more year left. I'm about to graduate. You know what I'm saying? I've got housing. This situation happened for me, right? Yeah. And I'm starting to see the change, and then I can look back, and I tell people all the time when they're feeling down and they've taken this journey with me for a while, I say, stop. And what I want you to do is just look behind you and look at all your footprints. Look at how far you've come from the time that I've met you, from all the growth that has happened. And your race isn't everyone else's race, right? So some people are sprinting and they're running. Some folks are in a car. You got knee prints. Then you got a footprint. Went back down to the knee because you rolled down the hill a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You laid there for a while, so that indentation is a little deep. That's right. And then you got back up, but you need to look back at that and give yourself some grace because you have been moving forward. Yeah. Even with the setbacks, you've been making progress. And so for me, I hope that there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. The last thing I'll say really quickly is when you were talking about the rich, right, the Elon Musk and things like that, one piece that I took from that is we're in a capitalistic society, right? We got to pay our bills. For those of us that have children or grandchildren, we want them to be able to do and have the things that we either didn't have or, have the things that we had. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take money. That's the society that we're in. But as you're working toward those things, the message to me in here also was don't lose sight. So as you start to excel and God begins to bless you with money and resources and houses and all these different things, don't forget that you need to give back. Yeah. Because sometimes it's like, man, I got it out of the soil, and once I've arrived, I did it. So you need to do it. I'm doing my thing. That's how hard I work, right? So that's another way that I took from it. It's like, no, you're not there now, but we all want to be there because we're all working to get there, right? We all want more money. We want a better job. We want the house. We want to do vacation. We want to put our kids in private school or sports or whatever. When you arrive there, don't forget. Stay on that spiritual path.
Yeah, that you more than likely have more than enough to spare, and I think we all have in one way or another. God has given us all more than enough to spare, whether it's time, talent, or tithes. And for those people that may not have the tithe, to give, one of the biggest resources that everybody, and I don't care who you are, even a 5-year-old, has is knowledge, and so when you're walking past, those unhoused people, and you're just like, well, I ain't got, nothing to give you. Man, you got information. You may know something, and you can say, hey, BHA is going to open up the waiting list, and they doing a rent cafe, go in and sign up, what I'm saying, and sharing that information that they may not have had the opportunity, to be privy to, we have to look outside of the box in terms of giving back and giving to, those that are less fortunate. And, sometimes, a smile and a hug, can go a long way with people. You just never know. And so my encouragement is, like I say, we all have, in one way or another, more than enough to be able to give. And some people, just simply are consumed with me, myself, and I. And, it's like, like you say, my day off, I worked all week and I'm not doing nothing else. You get 10, 20 minutes, maybe you ain't got 8 hours, in you to give, but you know what? Hey, I can come and, answer the phones for an hour. Something, we all have something, it's, like I said, just stick it outside of the box, in ways to, be a blessing to somebody else. And that's the whole thing, in one way or another, we are all rich. We're all rich, in one way or the other. So yeah, just don't hoard all of your riches and resources. You know,
Well, then I'm gonna leave you with that's the final word then.
Amen.
All right. I guess if we do that long enough, thinking outside the box will become the box. So, there's that. But for Pastor Ellington, I am Marwan Cameron. This is the No Cap Recap. This is the Conduit. We will see you next Saturday, 1 p.m.